All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the May 12th, 2026 MFRAC committee meeting. I am VJ Kapoor. I am the receiver for the city of Chester, and joined here today, we have almost all of our committee members. We have Councilman Shaquan Davis from the city of Chester. We've got Mr. Andrew Sheaf from DCED. We've got Kelly Diaz from Delaware County. And joined as always, I have my special assistant, Jacob Polikov, and Cody Deal, executive assistant from DCED. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Well, we start where we normally start with, just to see if there's any, just to make sure, Mr. Deal, you circulated any public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Receiver. No, we haven't gotten any public comments since the last meeting again. So, just as we always do, would like to encourage the public to reach out to us. The best way to do so is still through our resource account email address, which is info@chesterreceivership.com. Again, that's info@chesterreceivership.com.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Cody. Got a couple of updates for folks. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the city. No major slideshow presentation today. Kind of potpourri. We'll hit a couple of different things, and I also want to make sure I put in a plug for our next MFRAC, which will be May 26th, where we have an exciting guest who will be joining us on that. So let me start with what's going on in the city. Big council meeting tomorrow. I think big council meeting. There's a fair number of two kind of major issues that I think are on there for folks to look at. One is there will be the second reading, the passage of an amusement tax that the city will be implementing. Most cities in Pennsylvania have these. Ours is looking to go into effect, assuming it's passes council tomorrow, on July 1st. So that's one thing that we are looking, the council will be acting on. There's also a slate of parking issues, different parking matters that council will be acting on tomorrow. As many of you know, there's been a big focus on the mayor and council and city staff on improving just what I would call like the day-to-day livability for Chester residents. We see it everywhere from police to codes to illegal dumping to abandoned vehicles that I'm going to talk about. And another issue that always comes up is always parking in a city. And so we are going to be moving forward with a couple of different items on that. Probably most importantly has to do with a resolution that would allow the city to begin booting vehicles after 3 tickets. One of the big problems that we face, and again, many cities face this, is enforcement of traffic tickets. And just so everybody knows, the purpose of this type of parking stuff is not it's not a money raiser. It's not to raise money. In fact, in most cases, you're actually going to lose money when it comes to parking. Parking is like a service, right? And so one of the things that we run into though in terms of problems is people's behavior sometimes doesn't change unless there's real enforcement. And so that is something that we have kind of held off for a while. But in order to get some, in order to address a lot of parking issues, that's something that we will eventually that we need to deal with. So that is one of the matters that council will be dealing with tomorrow as well. And again, the purpose of this is to have people, obey parking regulations around the city. It's not great when people park in front of fire hydrants or in handicap spots when they're not supposed to, or too close to the corner or on sidewalks. It's not fair to the pedestrians. It's not fair to people who live around live in those communities or those neighborhoods. And as a result, sometimes you got to take enforcement action, and that's what city council is going to be doing tomorrow. So worth a watch for everybody. Again, a lot of other things on the council agenda, but I just want to call your attention to both of those. Any questions on that? Anything from the group on that? A lot of work's been put into this too. I want to be clear, both with the amusement tax as well as with the parking. There's a lot of going back and forth, a lot of thought. Again, the point here is not to punish anybody, actually, for either of those. But it's, one is we have to deal with revenues, and the other, we've got to deal with enforcement, quality of life issues in the city. So, Andrew, yeah,
Yeah,
you want
thanks, Mr. Receiver. Just curious, do you have any estimates of how much the amusement tax might bring in?
Yeah, not completely at the moment, Andrew. Like I think we had some preliminary estimates. It's not something that I have off the top of my head. Anytime you have kind of the first year, it's going to take a little bit of time, right, to do that. Um, and again, it also depends on like how many events and you have. I mean, I think it'd be safe to say to at least a couple $100,000 would be that. But again, I want to be a little careful that I don't, you know uh, let me just say, it's not going to get us out of bankruptcy, right? But it's one of these things that I think is important to do. As many of you may know, many of you who are in Chester may be following on the school district. The school district, I understand, will likely, move forward with taking the steps that they need to take to obtain what their share of the earned income tax will be. So under Pennsylvania law, a city, outside of the distressed pension can levy a 1% earned income tax. And if a school district so desires, it can take action to receive essentially half of that, right? So 0.5%. And to date, the school district, the Chester Upland School District has not done that. They are also obviously dealing with financial challenges there, and we expect them to take action probably beginning early next year on that. For most people, it's just, if they've already been paying their earned income tax to the city, they're not going to see a change. It's really just going to be like, I want to be clear, it's not a new tax. For most people, if you're already paying the Chester earned income tax, it's really a transfer. But what it means is the city's no longer getting that money. The school district is. And so as a result, we got to be careful, and we've got to take responsible actions to make sure that we backfill that revenue loss. So that's the purpose behind the amusement tax. Um, so anything else on that? Um, okay. Couple of litigation updates. Want to talk to you guys a little bit about some matters going on in the bankruptcy court, one issue going on in the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas, and then I want to give you guys an update on my abandoned vehicle and that whole process. So there was a relatively, I would call it, pretty significant decision in the bankruptcy court last week that stemmed from a motion made by the Chester Water Authority to lift the stay, which is to allow the case to proceed that it had filed back in 2019, having to do with trying to put the assets of the Water Authority into a trust. So back in 2019, the Chester Water Authority, this is what started all that litigation that ended up going to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and decided in January. What really kind of kicked that all off was the Chester Water Authority back in 2019. The board took action to actually try and take its assets and put them in a trust, which would have taken them away from everybody. And they had appointed just three trustees, and the city had taken action, and that's what sort of kicked off all the litigation that ended up with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And so when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court made its ruling in January, the Water Authority said, well, we'd like to restart that litigation because that litigation had gone on pause, had been paused because of the bankruptcy stay. The bankruptcy court denied that motion, is not allowing the Water Authority to proceed on that um, uh, with that litigation. And what's interesting about this decision is the bankruptcy judge read her order from the bench. And there's a transcript, and there's a part of the transcript that I want to read that kind of explains it. And I think it'll be helpful to hear what the bankruptcy court says. This is a federal bankruptcy judge says, because it sheds light on what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision was as well. So let me just read just a little bit of a paragraph from it. Judge Ashley Chan stated in open court, although the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has declared that the city no longer possesses the unilateral right to convey CWA's projects, it also maintained that the city does currently possess statutory rights through the Municipal Authorities Act to convey such projects collectively with Delaware County and Chester County. So the point of what the judge found was effectively that with that decision, what the decision basically said was the city still has an interest, but that interest is shared with Delaware County and Chester County, but it still has an interest. And as a result of having that interest, the court was concerned that moving forward with the trust litigation would impair the city's interests there. So that helps you kind of understand a little bit more about the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, right? Anytime people kind of see those decisions, there was something of being like, oh, well, that means it's all done and you can't do anything about it. You know, the city's sort of stuck. The city doesn't have any interest and the city should just walk away. But again, to be very clear, and this is a federal bankruptcy judge who is kind of talking about this in her ruling, right, on a pretty significant ruling, indicating that yes, the city of Chester does have an interest, along with Delaware County and Chester County, even as it stands now. So that's that matter. I'm not sure if folks have questions about that, but wanted to keep you all appraised on that. Um, Second litigation matter that's going on. Unfortunately, these are all with the Water Authority. Sorry, everybody. But we'll move along with this. The special legislation litigation that is going on that I filed earlier this year, asking the Commonwealth Court to find that the act that changed the board of the Chester Water Authority is unconstitutional. That, this Friday, there are a fair number of documents that the parties are going to be filing that are important. The Chester Water Authority, in response to the petition I filed basically I'm going to call it a motion. It's an application for the court to basically deny the petition based on something called res judicata, which is arguing that the constitutionality issue, either was raised or should have been raised prior to that. So it's kind of a procedural argument. Our response is due on Friday, and then the responses of Delaware County, Chester County, and the Chester Water Authority to the actual petition are also due on Friday. So a lot of stuff going on over there. Jacob and Cody, let's work together. Like, I don't think we have a lot of that stuff online, like the pleadings on that. We don't put that on our website. They're public documents once they're filed. So, folks, we'll work to do that soon to get a lot of that stuff out there, so you guys can look at that. Final matter has to do with the City of Chester's board appointment to the Water Authority. As many of you know, Mr. John Shelton, who was a board member appointed by the City of Chester, passed away, thus creating a vacancy. The City of Chester, City Council, Mayor, and Council confirmed the City Chief of Staff, Thomas Moore, to serve in that role. There was an initial issue with the Water Authority not seating Mr. Moore at the first meeting, or at least not allowing him to participate, despite him being there. That resulted in the city actually having to go into court to get a request from a judge to have Mr. Moore be allowed to participate in the same way that other board members would be allowed to participate. The Delaware County Court of Common Pleas permitted that in its order. Mr. Moore has participated in one of the board meetings. Unfortunately, the Water Authority has filed another action seeking to remove Mr. Moore, alleging that it has cause to remove Mr. Moore from the board. So they filed that a couple weeks ago. The city's answer was due yesterday. And again, that matter is going through the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas. Mr. Moore is continuing to participate, again, just as any other board member would be, which is what the city's position has been. So with that, it's a couple updates on the litigation front. Again, happy to answer any questions if the committee has any. All right, seeing none, let's talk about more fun stuff and good stuff that's going on in the city, which is some of the good work that's being done at all levels of the city with abandoned vehicles and other sorts of things that are going on. So if you guys remember, it might have been 2 MFRACs ago, we had Justin Tibbles, who is a special assistant to the mayor, who came in and talked about a new reporting system that the city has for residents to report things like abandoned vehicles, high weeds, illegal dumping, and I went ahead and filed an abandoned vehicle report. You guys remember me doing that. So I'm sort of excited to say, first off, the abandoned vehicle that I reported has been towed. It's gone. And that's exciting. It's good work by the city. There is a whole process behind all that. And the other sort of thing I'll say too, that again, just for the community, and again, we're going to be radically honest with each other on here. I did get an update first off that said that the city was working on it. I've not gotten an update yet that says that the matter is closed. Even though like I do know the car is gone because I drive by it every day and it is indeed gone. That is one of the things, just again for the public, if you guys are kind of waiting and looking and kind of wondering, hey, I'm not seeing anything in terms of like notices. The focus, of course, is actually on resolving the problem. So, again, we have, just so everybody knows, we have on the back end everything that has been submitted by the public. I don't have access to it, but members of the city do, and so I want to make sure everybody knows that that has been logged in, and that folks are working on it. So continue to do that. You can either do this on the City of Chester app, which again we encourage you guys to get, or from the City of Chester webpage. Um, One thing I do want to show though, and again, this is something that again I get really excited about this work because I think it's indicative of kind of like some of the key stuff that cities do. Is I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the abandoned vehicles as well. So what I've got here is a slide with some photos that were taken by a member of my staff, Jabari Jones, who is working now. He's been working with the city on the abandoned vehicles, but he's also been driving around the city and using the app to find abandoned vehicles. Because there's no better way to learn than actually doing it and then teaching it. And so what I've got for you on here are a couple of photos of some of the abandoned vehicles that Jabari has seen, as well as I'll show you in the middle here, kind of his route. So in terms of the stats right now, and again, we know these stats. There's some of the stats, again, we're still kind of working on, but there have been, at this point, approximately 70 abandoned vehicles that have been reported across the city through the app. And what Jabari has been doing, this little thing over here in the middle, this is not part of the app. This is part of an app that Jabari has that shows like where he's been driving around. So he's driven around about a quarter of the city. And he's starting in one place. He's going to get through the entire city. I guarantee. He's going to go through the entire city. But he's driven about 17 miles in the city, and has found a fair number of abandoned vehicles, and has been reporting those. And what you can see is like they run the gamut in terms of kind of like what they look like. So you got a car like this, if you guys can see, kind of this looks like a Tahoe of sorts, right? Busted windows, right? Flat tire, just off the street, right? Something like that can get off because it's a public safety issue. Something like that can get off the street within 24 hours. That is something that can get moved quickly and moved on. Here you got a photo of a tow truck that's getting rid of an abandoned vehicle. Over here again, you can see the kind of abandoned vehicles that we're talking about in the city, like something completely missing the front. You know, we do have issues with sometimes with garages that are kind of parking cars around the street for spare parts. Like you can't do that. That's not permitted. And even if you've been able to do it before, we're cracking on that. We're cracking down on that now. It's not fair to the people who are around you. It's unsightly. It's amazing the kind of stories that you'll hear of like what some of these cars are filled with. There's a lot of this will attract garbage, will attract, just people dump things in there. I've heard stories in the past about propane tanks, just being in cars and those things like that's just it's a public safety issue. The other thing I asked Jabari about like if anything else just kind of like struck him as being a little bit unusual. He said he's seen a fair number of RVs on the street. So, I mean, this is one of them, right? And this is big, right? This is, something like this is an abandoned RV. Like, you just don't get a normal tow truck to tow that. But it's an abandoned vehicle and it needs to go. It's not allowed to be there. So people who are parking RVs or whatever, um, I'm not sure if Chester has become a place where people think that that's okay. It's not, and they're going to get towed. So, that's another one of those things where again, it's some of the stuff that we're learning about, as we're going through the city. Jabari is also taking, photos and reporting things of like illegal dumping, trash and those sorts of things. So, I do want to let the community know council's, fully behind this, just really working to try and improve, what we can here in the city. And this doesn't require more dollars. This just requires better management, and staying on top of things. So, just wanted to report that out to the group. Anyone have any questions on this?
Mr. Receiver.
Yeah.
No question, but whenever we're traveling in the state and talking to different cities, parking is always like one of the number one issues that people are like grappling with and dealing with. So just wanted to say it's great to see the city, take on these abandoned vehicles and the council action coming up with parking as well. Just great to see the progress in the city.
Yeah. And just to tie those together, right? Like Andrew, like an abandoned vehicle that's on a street is one place where you can't park, right? So like we get a lot of complaints from people about how they can't park in front of their house. And look, like it's a city, so you can't always park in front of your house, right? But if it's because like there's an abandoned vehicle over there, that's an issue, right? And we need to take care of that. So everybody keep up with your vehicles. If you got, like get your registrations done up, uh, it's important to do all that. If you're a garage, don't put your cars on the street. Like, these are some of the things that we're kind of gradually enforcing as we go along. I mean, again, this isn't a money grab. This is an attempt to try and, to enforce, right, some of the stuff that needs to be enforced. So, good work by everybody kind of across the board here, and we'll continue to stay on it. So, once Jabari gets to the entire city, maybe we'll get him on here and he can talk about like what he's seen, and I think that'll be probably pretty cool for the public and for the committee. Um, Before I talk about the next MFRAC we have, does anyone have anything they wanted to add for this MFRAC or anything else they wanted to announce for the group? Okay. Seeing as none, let me give a plug for the next MFRAC, which will be May 26th. I'm really excited that Professor Christopher Melee, who is a professor affiliated with the University of Buffalo, but who runs a program out of Swarthmore College called the Chester Semester, is going to be joining us for a conversation that will deal with a lot of the history of Chester. He has studied Chester quite a bit. His book, Race and the Politics of Deception, which he put out a couple of years ago, is an incredible book, I think, on kind of learning a little bit more about Chester's history, right? Particularly for those of us who are like not from Chester, right? Other than Councilman Davis here on the phone or on Zoom, like none of us are from Chester, right? And it helps to like learn, right, a little bit more about the community. And again, what's interesting about Chester and different about Chester is that, I've worked in a lot of cities, and other than like the big ones like Pittsburgh or Chicago, there's often not a lot of books written about them, like from kind of a recent history or policy standpoint. Chester actually has a few of them written about it in Delaware County as well too. I talked about ruling suburbia before, so you've heard me sort of allude to a lot of this stuff. You've heard me kind of talk about it when we talked about the Act 73 special legislation and how my position, about how I think, this was how Chester was targeted. Professor Melee has actually studied a lot of this stuff and kind of the political history here in Chester. And again, I think from folks who are from Chester who may want to join and watch this just as to see if he gets it right. And those of you who may be watching who aren't from Chester, I think it's worth it to do. And it's not a very long book, but I think it's a really helpful book. I know a couple of you guys have read it. I know Mike Dowery, when he was receiver, I think gave it out. It's worth it. It's worth the read. And again, I think it helps put into I hate saying this word put into context, but like it helps give the background for I think a lot of the issues that the city is grappling with. And to me, I think it also helps address the question of like, why is it so hard here in Chester, right? There's a lot of other communities that have faced the same kind of problems that Chester has faced with, again, with poverty, with deindustrialization, with, population decline. But it just seems to be much harder here in Chester. And I do think that books like Professor Melee's help to show why Chester's situation is really is different. So we'll be excited to see him. He'll be here on May 26th. So with that, everybody, I hope everybody has a great couple of weeks until we see each other again. Until then, thanks everybody, and we'll see you back on May 26th with Christopher Melee.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye all.